Welcome to the Lost Signals Discusses Film and TV. Using the revolutionary Manzur-Amosi Thurlow scale,
or MONS,
we scrupulously review these art forms with an emphasis on narrative structure. Join us for another entertaining episode.
Hello, and welcome to another episode of the Lost Signals Reviews TV and Film. My name is Chris Morgan. I'm here with Stephen Amosi.
Hello.
And Scott Thurlow.
Pew pew! Explosions!
And today we are reviewing the last film in the Star Wars saga, the main Star Wars saga.
Quotes on last film.
Of the main Star Wars saga, called The Rise of Skywalker. And does anybody have a funny log line?
No, because we couldn't really decide. I guess I'll try to make up one. If you hated The Last Jedi, you're like this, and vice versa. Star Wars The Retcon? I don't know.
Pew, pew.
Yeah, that's pretty good. That's what I said as my intro.
That was a good log line. Pew pew. And Steve, would you like to discuss the plot, please?
Sure. Kylo Ren is mad that the Emperor still exists, so he tries to kill him. And then it doesn't work. And then he goes to find Rey. Rey turns out to be also hard to kill, even though he kind of doesn't want to kill her. The rebels decide that it's bad that the Emperor is around. They go. They find out about this magical planet that no one has ever been able to find, and as far as I can tell, has never been mentioned before. Right? Has this planet been mentioned before?
No, it's not.
Retcon stuff, yeah.
Right? And then so they have to go there. They do a final battle on what the fuck is it called? X something.
Doesn't matter.
X something.
Star Wars planet name 25.
And there's a pretty epic final battle, and they win. Turns out Jedi still exist, so the entire name of the last movie was pointless.
Rey is every Jedi ever, apparently.
And
she's every woman.
That's the very bare bones of the plot there.
Okay.
Let's go into a little bit more, guys.
Okay.
All right. So yeah, it's weird because not weird, but we discussed this, and yes, it's been everywhere on like the internet wars, if you will. So I'll just say this outright again on any Star Wars thing we ever do. I'm probably one of the most neutral people on Earth towards this franchise in general. Some of it's cool, some of it's lame, some of it's hokey. But I respect it, of course, where it sits in pop culture. So the meta thing is like, Last Jedi tried to sort of mentally commentate itself upon the nature of, I guess, the fandom and so forth. And then, of course, as we know behind the scenes, many of the Star Wars films have been somewhat troubled with the directors and so forth. So I feel like as if JJ, in this one, who came back to direct it, sort of tried to wipe away some of the stuff that he didn't like and fans didn't like about Last Jedi. So, like, it feels as if, again, there's a whole bunch of narrative ideas, like, thrown into the mix. Like, here's a character here, and here's that. Like, right? You just said, oh, we never heard about this thing before. It's a secret Sith fortress. Oh, no. Like, yeah. Okay, like, whatever. But, like, I don't know. Like, I don't know how to feel. I wasn't necessarily bored watching this story unfold, but nor was I, like, totally on the edge of my seat. It was, like, fine enough. I kind of want to start off with a 1, score-wise. I can go up to a 2, but it certainly was... I noticed a number of moments, more than a number... I'll say like maybe a dozen, roughly, where like I'm like, that was weird. Like it's not even playing by its own internal logic here and there, even within the Star Wars like universe and lore and shit that I know enough about, but again, I'm not a super fan of. So that's how it felt to me, like my initial impressions. So with that, what do you guys think?
If I might really quickly before you go, Chris, I know I did like a really offhanded summation of the storyline there, but that's because like I feel like a lot of this storyline kind of ran together for me. I'm probably gonna give this a 2. Like it was good in terms of like it got me through the movie and I was like engaged most of the time, and it was fun to watch. But I feel like they were really interested in bringing Star Wars back to its former glory, like in terms of whatever J.J. Abrams wanted it to be, and I feel like he wanted to. Like, I feel like J.J. Abrams was pissed off that he was too young to actually have input on the original Star Wars. He's like, let me bring in this new shit, this cool stuff. Or, like, maybe he just read a lot of the books when he was a kid or something. He was like, sure. I heard of this planet that the Sith love, and we can bring that into the new thing. But, like, a lot of it came kind of out of nowhere for the main story, and there were scenes that like were eye rolling to me. There were some really cool scenes. There were some really eye rolling scenes, like when they go back to the planet that Luke was on, and where a lot of the Last Jedi happened, solely seemingly for the reason of erasing all the shit from the Last Jedi. It was kind of like annoying to me. I was like, all right, so Luke's here to say I was wrong about that, give you a second lightsaber, and give you an X-wing.
Like I said,
it was kind of, I don't know. It was very. I have very mixed feelings about this. I'm probably gonna give it a 2. There was a lot of but I want to talk about the stuff that I don't like more, which makes me feel kind of like I should give this a lesser score. I don't know. What do you think, Chris?
All right. First of all, when I was watching this film, I decided to take this approach to it. I am going to discuss plot. I'm going to talk about the story and all my hatred and anything I had issues with. No, it's not really my hatred, but the things I'm going to condense the stuff that I didn't like about the film into 2 categories that we'll get to later.
Nice.
Because I want to explain why I'm giving this a 3.
Okay.
Because story-wise, I felt like really they should have outlined this movie before they wrote The Force Awakens. I think they should have gone into this trilogy with a plan because they didn't go into it with a plan.
But this movie never exists without Last Jedi, which was a huge departure from Force Awakens.
But the thing I liked about Last Jedi was every place, as I said before, everything that most people hated about Last Jedi is the stuff that I loved. And the stuff that I didn't like about Last Jedi, I thought was silly and pandering to the trying to get the family quota in.
I get you.
Because this Pogs or Porgs or whatever the fuck they're called, I can't stand those things. Those things are so stupid. But we need something to sell to kids, so we have to come
because of Star Wars.
Yeah, somebody at the theater
did a bit better on Mandalorian with Baby Yoda.
Had a Porg on his shoulder, when he was
okay.
And I was like, okay. But story wise, I feel like they really were trying to. I think retcon is kind of good because I think he was not only trying to steer the film to put it back on course from both films, because I really liked The Force Awakens when I saw it, but it didn't hold up, and I did not like The Last Jedi. And I think this film really tried to do a really good course correction on those 2 films. And I felt in a lot of ways, this is what Return of the Jedi should have been. Because my problem with Return of the Jedi was that I feel like they wasted, and we're going to get to this later. This is going to be one of the issues I'm going to have later. But Return of the Jedi, I think they made a mistake by really.
Return or Last Jedi?
No, Return of the Jedi back in 1983.
The original? Okay.
Yeah. I think pacing was a problem with it, and I think they really should have just, at the beginning of that film, jumped into the battle of rescuing Han instead of having all the fakakta nonsense. So in this film, I felt like they were in a mad dash to get the story told, because I think the story was an interesting story. And I did do some research and find out what George Lucas's original outline was, and there was a planet outside the sphere, but it was even bonker shit crazier than this one.
Okay.
And the thing I liked about The Last Jedi was the things I loved about it is when they really broke a lot of the rules and a lot of expectations. And this film right off the bat started off to be really weird. So there was a good blending of weird, and there's a good blending of it's a Star Wars film. There's enough of that flavor, but there was enough weird and enough ideas in there that really, from a narrative, from a story standpoint, really held my interest. I'm going to nitpick it later.
Okay.
So this is where all my love is going where most of my love is going is because I really love the ideas. I was able to follow the narrative, even though a lot of it was kind of, that seemed out of left field. I bought into it because I felt that the story was overall strong. I thought it was a good story.
Quick question. Do you think that J.J. Abrams hated Hux and wanted him to die? And
all right, first of all,
to kill him?
Hux was barely there.
He was like, I'm the spy, and then immediately gets murdered.
Yeah,
after that.
It's like, I wonder who the spy is. It's Hux. no, there was like, as soon as like, they've got a mole inside, I was like, it's Hux.
Pre-spoiler.
Because Hux was basically there in The Last Jedi, or sorry, was there in The Force Awakens. It was a fucking joke in The Last Jedi. The Last Jedi opened up with the your mama joke, you know, and Hux was like a moron during that. So it's just like, I actually like the fact that they gave Hux something to do, even if he was
die.
They didn't give. Yeah, they gave him the job of dying.
Yeah, they gave him the job of off-screen mole and dying.
Yeah,
which I was fine with. Like I knew it was going to happen as soon as they captured Finn and Chewie and
you knew he was going to die.
Oscar Isaacs.
You knew he was going to be the
yeah. I knew he was going to shoot the execution squad, and I knew he was going to end up dying. I mean, you know,
should have had a misfire like in what was that, Schindler's List? That would have been better.
I didn't see Schindler's List. I know.
What? You've never seen Schindler's List?
No, I didn't.
What?
All right.
Next week's yeah. Christmas. That was my Christmas.
I'm sorry. I don't mean to derail.
No, but holiday cheer. But yeah, Hux has always been. I've never understood why he was there. I know what they tried to do, but they failed.
He was at least like a junior Nazi in Force Awakens, I guess.
Yeah, and he was yeah. They did nothing to develop this character, and I thought it was a really good idea just to eliminate him. I mean, that was fine. But no, right. I thought I love the fact that this movie starts off where they did the obligatory start off with the Star Destroyer, and then you're following Kylo Ren, jumping here and there, and then he goes to the Emperor's like secret hideout in the middle of, or out in the Outer Rim, wherever the fuck it was. But I thought it started off really interestingly. It's just like, okay, if they had planned this out, because there was really no plan going into this last trilogy. If they had planned it out, this would have made a lot more sense. And I feel like they really tried very, very hard to, yeah, they did try to retcon a lot. But,
and you think it succeeded though?
I actually did.
Okay.
Again, I am going to get to my problems with the retcon later on.
Right.
I'm going to give the love here, and you will get my nitpicks later.
Really?
But I thought they had a lot of interesting ideas. I thought there was a lot of stuff that was really weird. And one of the things that I loved was I'm not really big into like, hey, take this non-canonical stuff. It's like read this graphic novel or watch this TV show or the anime, whatever cartoons. I'm like, I'm not going to watch 500,000 hours of Star Wars just to get some minor reference. But the one thing they introduced in this comic book, I think it was Empire 2, way back in the 90s, was that they developed the whole thing where the Emperor used cloning technology. And I love the fact that they decided Snoke was a clone and a puppet of the Emperor, that he was an invention of the Emperor. Because they invented Snoke, didn't know what to do with him. They basically killed him off he was a non-entity they killed off in the last movie. So yes, address the fact that Snoke was just a MacGuffin and that he was a clone. And I love the clones of, I love the Snoke clones like in jars.
No clones.
Like a Venture Brothers reference almost.
Yeah.
It's just like the boys from Brazil.
It would be a lot better if they were potentially going for that.
Snoke's from Brazil.
I kind of liked a lot of the doing away with their mistakes in the past by not really delving into them, but saying like, yeah, I've been orchestrating this for the last 30, 40 years, whatever. So it's like, okay, great. Get rid of the shit that was not important that was like a MacGuffin this whole time. And let's just get to the fucking story. And I like that the fact that the Emperor was not just hey, we're gonna, I really thought like the end of the movie was gonna be like, hi, I'm the Emperor pulling the strings. They began the movie like saying, hi, I'm the Emperor and I've been orchestrating this bullshit for the last 40 years.
Not really explaining it very well, but saying it.
Yeah, but
at least.
Yeah, but my whole point was I like they entered the film
they
saying,
told,
like,
but did not show.
Sure.
Yeah.
Go on.
I will ask a quick question, plot-wise. Too many planet killers? Are we sick of this fucking bullshit yet?
That's going to be one of my
every single fucking ship is a planet killer now?
You don't need the thing I liked about Rogue One was when they were testing out the Death Star, they didn't destroy the planet. They just kind of destroyed an area.
That's what you have to destroy more planets
That's what the planet fucking killers... this is going to be part of the things. This is one of the big zeros I'm going to give later on. Okay. Because, like, why... You don't need a planet killer. You just need a weapon or something that's going to take out a large.
How about 1,000,000 planet killers, Chris?
How about all of them?
How about a planet killer for every planet in
Yes,
the universe?
and that was
It's
one
very
of my
efficient.
big issues with the film that I will tear apart later
All right,
on.
So you're giving it a 3. I'm giving it a 2. What are you giving it?
I think I might go. Here's my final 2 thoughts. I guess something Chris said. Yeah, it'd be like they didn't have a plan, obviously. So like as fans knowing that, or like as critics having that knowledge, it shows. I think, and maybe you said, Chris, like you liked a lot of interesting ideas. I think that would be true in theory, but in execution, didn't really come off that much. So I guess I won't like totally knock it. I'll go with a all right, soft 2 overall, and call it a day at that because I don't have that many issues with it, but I also don't fucking like have a boner for it in that sense either. So
He's got a soft 2. It's
it
not a
was,
bump.
exactly.
Yeah,
I don't have a straight 6.
it's
Just face it.
flaccid. You know,
Sure.
you've got a flaccid too.
Anyways,
Sure.
but that's what I'm going to settle on because it was good enough given where I stand in my own like relation to the culture or the property in general.
Excellent. And since if nobody has anything to say about plot, I'm going to, Scott, continue with themes.
All right, I guess every theme in Star Wars you've ever seen in your life, it's the same fucking one because it's a retcon. Like, maybe even more egregiously so. Like, yes, let's all come together and fight the XP for the Nazis as the empires they always have been and still are. And oh no, like Hitler in their version is still alive. Like, 'cause he has black magic.
No,
and
Hitler didn't kill
supernatural.
himself.
Sure. So like I don't know. Like
We saved Hitler's brain.
Yeah.
he saved his own brain somehow because of the dark side of the Force.
Snoke
and-
actually is the boys from Brazil.
Yeah, because of Sith stuff. Because this is what exists in the lore of the whole mythology of the entire setting. So I guess like I will defaultly give it a 1, but I don't want to do that. But it also feels disingenuous to give it a 0 because it's the same one. And if I've given that this 1 before in previous films, then why not here? It's always pretty much been on the same level it has been, right? Find your family and then come together and fight a big evil, like, a big oppressor. Sure, that's been true of the previous 8 films pretty much.
Yeah.
So, like, I'm sort of reluctantly giving a 1, but I can't, like, again, in all good faith, just say, like, fuck you and 0. It's the same one they've always done, and it's within where it sits good enough.
There's a theme that's come up in our themes last several podcasts about identity. And this is I was trying to find a theme
Yeah,
for
that's
this.
like a fine sub-theme,
But
I guess.
the thing is, it's not as strong of an identity thing as, we've discussed in the past,
No.
where we're talking about Jojo Rabbit was a great example of like identity, where you have this Nazi idealist, Hitler invisible friend, and then, finding out who Jojo is by the end of it. This is a much more simple take on it. I can't
Think about it, the Emperor was the invisible friend of Adam Driver. Kind of like Hitler was in JoJo.
Well, Adam Driver's the invisible friend of Rey.
Yeah.
Kylo
Was
is
he-
the invisible
So
friend
forth.
of Rey.
But I
Go
think it is not as nearly as complex as JoJo. But but thematically, yeah, this isn't even close to JoJo. It's not. It's definitely.
I would
not gonna
never compare these
We
two
don't
films
have
in
to-
the
we
same
don't have to-
sentence.
Be. Well, they're both
to
about
dwell on-
Nazis and invisible friends. Come on.
We've done a lot of Nazi movies
They're not
lately. This is
about
the
that.
least
Jesus
about
Christ,
Nazis.
we have.
This is the least
Go on.
about Nazis of all the Nazi movies we've done.
Well, this is not Sophie's Choice. Anyway, but it's not a strong theme. I think it would have been a richer meal if they had planned this out. But there is a really core theme of identity here, and it's enough to for me to give it a 1.
Yeah, I mean, it's exactly what you said. Like, find your real family. Like, a family doesn't actually, like, your biological family doesn't say
Determine who you are,
Yeah,
sure.
exactly. And like, that's a stronger, or at least more loudly said in this one than it has been in past episodes of Star Wars.
Right.
But, yeah, I mean, it's fine. It's a fine thing. I'm gonna give it a 1.
Pretty much
think
where I
it's
stand.
Fine. And Steve-O, I broke one of your things. I referenced other films. I'm sorry, dude.
We didn't say it for this one. I said
I
one day I'm going to
ruined-
make you not reference any other films,
I am
and we'll see
going
how it goes.
to. There's going to be a lot of editing.
Yeah, thanks, guys. Can't wait to edit this one. Anyways,
It's a post-production thing.
go on.
But anyway, so we're all giving it a 1?
Yeah.
Okay, great.
Soft
So-
one, but yes.
Soft one. So
It's a soft one.
Super soft one.
it's flaccid. Yes, it's half-mast.
It's only half a lightsaber.
We have a studio audience of 2 today, so it's pretty exciting.
biggest crowd ever,
Hi,
folks.
studio audience.
Come
Audience.
on.
Yeah.
anyway, it's to me with antagonist, and Scott and I are really big on these nebulous, thematic,
Incorporeal. elements.
yeah. And this one is interesting because, again, you've got a big antagonist who is the Emperor, but part of the antagonist kind of goes to my idea of themes with identity, and part of the antagonist the individual antagonist for all the characters was who they are, what they are, and the role they play.
And the Emperor.
The embodiment, the physical embodiment of the antagonist was the Emperor.
Right.
But if you break it down on a character level, again, the antagonist is like predetermination versus,
The Emperor.
Are you fucking trolling me?
Yeah, I'm trolling.
Obviously.
I'm sorry.
All right.
Go on.
No, but my whole point is there is, along with the themes with identity, I feel like every character, I like the fact that like Kylo and, Rey were always fighting, he's fighting against the good and she's fighting against the dark. So he's fighting against the light. He wants to be a Sith, and she's fighting against.
But does he?
But that's the. He actually has a character arc, which I thought was pretty cool.
Mm-hmm.
That he actually, again, I'm going to get to this would have been a richer meal.
He is Jojo Rabbit.
Nobody is Jojo Rabbit. Stop referencing other films, Steve-O.
But
I'm going to give the antagonist a 1 because I feel like there was the physical embodiment of an antagonist in the Emperor, but I found it much more interesting the internal struggles that Rey and Kylo were going through, and I thought it was interesting that once again, and it was something they did start in Force Awakens, where Kylo was in a lot of ways going towards this ideal of the dark side. Like he idolized Darth Vader, he idolized his grandfather, and I always found that interesting. But I also found it even more interesting that actually is something they picked up on that I really loved about the Last Jedi, was that in The Last Jedi they gave a hint that there was a darkness to Rey that she was fighting against that wanted to take her. So I felt like they paid off in Kylo's story from the Force Awakens, and they paid off Rey's story from The Last Jedi. So you had him wanting to embrace the dark and couldn't, and she was struggling to maintain the light, which she ultimately did. I'm giving antagonist a 1, because overall, plot-wise, the Emperor, great, but I found it much more interesting was the internal struggles these two had, for their own personal antagonists. So I'm giving it a 1.
I'm going to start with my nitpicks here, I guess, or things that peel away the layers of the narrative that I didn't think gelled, I guess. So, yes, yeah, I agree with your troll. It's the Emperor, obviously, like one of the most famous big bads ever in the history of any fucking story. And I think a lot of the stuff you said, like identity stuff, I don't disagree that it's there, but I think that probably shifts more into themes because like the characters, like their whole struggle is to find these MacGuffins to fight the Emperor who is alive again, like, right? So here's the thing. What was his fucking plan? Like, what got me at the end, he was like, come kill me, and then you can become all the Sith. But she kills him anyway, just in a different way, so that's fine.
Yeah,
it's fine.
But it does make sense. She bounced
Please
back.
explain it to me. Or actually,
Okay.
I kind of don't want you to.
On the most Tinker Toy level, she bounced back his own fate and let his own hate and let himself destroy himself, is what
I
happened.
guess, but it was like fighting with fire to me. It didn't make any sense as a plan. And I guess, like, of course, like, it's always, like, the underdog rebels versus the oppressing empire. Again, that hasn't changed either. So, I don't know, like, I want to give it a 0. Like, I'm leaning towards that only because we've seen it so many times and executed so much better, even within Star Wars films. And yeah, while, of course, it's there as part of the plot, like, it's one of the threads that holds everything together. That's what they're unifying and fighting against and struggling, yes, internally with themselves so they can grapple with that and then get back out there and fight the Emperor, fight the Sith, and fight the Last Order, or whatever the fuck the name it was.
Yeah, whatever.
So
First and
it's
last.
the final order.
First,
I believe it was
first last, and always,
No,
yes.
It was the final order in this one. It was the first order in word before. But
Whatever
anyway.
their fucking bureaucratic names are. So I'm sorry. Before you begin, I'm saying
Yes.
I'm leaning towards a 0 for all that. So,
Here's the nod to the prequels.
And-
it's fighting against bureaucracy.
and the other thing that you said, I'm shipping to themes and giving it maybe a stronger one.
I agree with
Okay.
you on that, on those two things that you just said, Scott. And also, I was really hoping, just as a little aside, really hoping when her fight with the Emperor kills her at the end, and then Kylo saved her. I was hoping like the end of the movie would just be like an endless loop of them saving each other back.
That would be like a fucking robot chicken skit.
Right?
Which would be really funny.
I agree. Kylo saves her, and then she saves Kylo. Yeah. So anyway, I'm gonna give antagonist probably a 0. Like the Emperor was not a super strong antagonist for me, and that's kind of where I'm going to leave it.
Okay.
Yeah, I mostly agree for the points I said. Just maybe in some other universe I would have, but in this one I just felt it was too weak, not enough, and wasn't executed well.
Okay, so I give it a 1, and the two you gave it a 0.
Mm-hmm.
Which moves us over to Steven with protagonist.
My protagonists.
Protagonist sounds like a Star Wars name itself.
Are Rey, and then to a lesser extent Finn and Poe, I guess.
Yeah, I guess I would say three of them largely share duties, but Rey being like the biggest chunk of it.
So, and I feel like they almost tried to make Kylo a protagonist of this, at least towards the end. But I'm gonna leave it with those three for now: Rey, Finn, and Poe. And I think that they all did a pretty good job. I especially liked Rey in this one. I thought that her arc was pretty solid. Her forgiving Kylo was pretty alright. And like, he had his own arc, which led to that, which is pretty good. But yeah, I mean, I don't have too much to say about the protagonist, so I'm going to give it probably a 1, and I'm going to let you guys talk.
Sure. I mean, I would agree that they're probably like the core of the protagonist, like the main characters. Kylo's an interesting one because could have almost maybe shifted previously just now to antagonist, but I don't think that's quite true. I think maybe he's like the most important secondary character, which you might get to.
Yeah.
But yeah, I do think like Rey had a fine arc, and of course like the big reveal, who's her parents, who is her ancestors, and so forth. Like she was on a journey, as we mentioned previously, so that was resolved to an extent. And I think they gave Finn and Poe like a good enough slice of the plot and action.
I'm not sure they had an arc though, either one of them.
Yeah, see that's well, I'm getting to that. Like they were the same kind of people they always were. Like Finn met a fellow like deserter stormtrooper who rose up against the Empire, and I guess that was a nice little moment. But I guess again, here's where some nitpicks come in, where it's just like it's hard to describe that you've seen this stuff before, so it's not that it doesn't work. It's just that it's almost like treading ground. And yeah, they moved some of the characters along a little bit, but maybe it goes back to, I don't know if I said this or meant to say it earlier, that this movie felt like it could have been almost 2 movies. And I've seen that same thing leveraged elsewhere in like other reviews I was checking out previously, where like they try to mash all this stuff together and maybe it could have been spread out. Like Kylo's his story could have been its own movie and have its own arc, but it was all like sort of, again, thrown together in this one. So I guess at the end of the day, I will say that it's probably good enough for a 1. And I just jump on or build on your point, agree with it that, yeah, Rey's story/journey was the best executed, again, the best fleshed out. And then, again, Poe and Finn that were there along for the ride, and they were fine enough, even if they didn't have like the most amazing arc or a huge one unto themselves. So that's where I stand. What do you think, Chris?
I'm going to say that Rey's the protagonist because I feel like...
Just her?
Yeah.
Okay.
Because I feel like these 3 films were her arc. Her and Luke's story in The Last Jedi I thought was great. Except for Luke milking the one thing.
Yeah.
Literally.
No. But seriously, in all honesty, I thought that the most interesting thing was, and you know what, it would have been really interesting. It would have been really easy to make Rey and Mary Sue. And the one thing I liked about the last 2 films, especially this one and Last Jedi, was they really subverted that, even more so than Luke in the original trilogy. They made that I felt Rey's struggle to embrace the light.
I think it was certainly one of the strongest aspects of the script.
Yeah, but I'm going to say that I think overall it was Rey's story. I think Kylo was a very strong secondary character.
He's essentially a foil, right?
Right.
Like, in the most traditional sense. Almost.
But I think that he was a really great counterbalance to Ray. And I'm going to go discuss more of him in secondary. But I really felt that this really solidified that this was Ray's story. And I thought they really did a good job of paying off the seeds they planted in Force Awakens and the stuff that they really dealt with her in the last film. I thought paid off really well. I thought she was a great protagonist. The story did hinge upon her at the end of it.
That is fair.
At the end of the day, it did hinge upon her. I'm going to give her a very strong one because I really was rooting for her. And even though I kind of knew where they were going to go with it at the end, and this is the way I feel about with antagonists and protagonists is like if with antagonists, and the reason I gave antagonists a one is because I felt that the Emperor, as much for whatever obligatory villain they had for this, I felt that he was a threat, and I felt that he was more of a threat to her than anything, and I thought that he really did a good job of his influence on Rey, and that, you know, spoiler alert, I guess we're already spoiling the shit out of this thing, was that she was Palpatine's granddaughter, which, you know, all right, whatever. But I really felt, I really was empathetic to her. I really did worry about where she was going to end up at the end of, even though I had an idea where she was going to end up. I thought she was a very strong protagonist, so I'm going to give her one.
I just want to add one thing. You mentioned, like, the Mary Sue thing. I don't personally feel this, but I did see it elsewhere, and I thought it was funny. Like, she's like OP in terms of the Force. She can do all this like shit we've never seen before. Like, but I don't think they necessarily detracted from her as a character and what they did with her arc. So I'm not going to use that.
One of the things
really
I
quick.
love. Go on.
Sorry. Well, really quick question. Do you guys think it would have been better? So, like, at the end of the movie, she says her name is Skywalker, which makes
I kind of hated that actually, but
do you think it would have been better? I almost think it would have been better if she was like, I am taking Palpatine back.
Yeah.
Like, I am making Palpatine like
there's no way right.
an okay thing to say. Like, I'm erasing all of his previous
It's
shit.
okay to be a Palpatine.
Yeah,
I get what you mean. Like, to answer your question, yes, I think that would have been a better choice. But the second she landed on Tatooine, like, it was obvious what she was going to say. Like,
Yep.
you know. But I'm still giving her a one
Anyway,
overall,
yeah,
and,
one
and
for me.
I'll count Poe and again and Finn like underneath her and give them also protagonist credit.
Yeah.
Overall.
Okay, I'm giving her one.
same.
Okay, Scott, and it is with you as secondary.
So let's start with Kylo, right? So to me, he was fine. Again, I like Adam Driver quite a bit, in fact, but I think he's like, Star Wars are the worst movies he's ever done because he's such a good actor, and like he has to work with the Star Wars dialogue and script that he's given, and it's fine. So like, I'll give you a second. But yeah, so, and of course then they throw in all these other characters, like, you know, Leia of course is there, CGI'd in, like Carrie Fisher, her actually was like Billy Lord, like all the other like rando characters in the back. And speaking of rando, Lando is also in it, right? Like they bring back a bunch
Rando
of people.
Calrissian.
Yeah, Han Solo shows up, Harrison Ford shows up for like 2 minutes. Who else? I didn't have Laura Dern.
Rando Calrissian.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's the best. But yeah, I mean, it's a perfect play on things. But I'm just saying, like, yeah, they threw in all these things, like Maz, the little alien, like blah blah blah, like the droids, like
Yeah, why
whatever.
the fuck is Maz there? For no reason,
Part of
apparently.
the Rebel
Maz-
Alliance now?
Because Maz is there.
Yeah, just
So, like-
just to show her, I guess.
they're all there as like mostly backdrop, like window dressing, and like it's fine. They each have like a line or two, like fucking Charlie we were saying from Lost, whatever, like is also a rebel as well. Like all this stuff, Matt from Heroes. But
Yeah.
I think like Kylo Ren is like, again, in terms of the actual internal story and what's happening, he's the most important one. And yeah, I think he did have a good arc, like you said, Chris. It sort of goes back to the struggling with, like, again, within the internal mythology, the light side, the dark side, like who he is he Kylo Ren, is he Ben Solo, etc., and versus his relationship to Rey, as you mentioned, also built up over the previous two films. So I think like overall it's mostly fine, and maybe a lot of it some of it at least can go to style, where like the planets themselves, the settings, the worlds, like kind of can be their own character, but for the most part, the collective group of like scrappy rebels is as serviceable as it always has been, and standout would be Adam Driver as Kylo Ren, because I did think his again journey was one of the better things that were included in this film.
I think it's interesting to see heroes of previous films become the secondary characters of these films. You know, you got
literally passing the torch.
You have like Han, Luke, Leia. Yes,
Chewie.
literally, almost literally passing the torch when Luke hands her the lightsaber back after she tries to throw it in the fire, and then gives her another one. He's like, one is not enough. You need 2 lightsabers. But like, you know, you have them, Hux.
I forgot about him even. We didn't even mention
Chewie.
that much.
Like, I think everybody does a fine job. The thing is that like you only get actual stories and story arcs from a very few of these characters.
Yeah, true.
However, I think that they all fill out the world well enough to give it a 1.
I think Kylo was a great supporting character in that if you're going to look at like in terms of like the core struggle, if you want to take the internal themes of identity and the internal struggles, I think that Rey and Kylo, I think Kylo I think foil is a good example, is a good analogy. I like the fact that Kylo was started off by being trained by Luke, and that he was the son of Leia and Han. And I like the fact that Rey started her training with Luke and finished it with Leia. And the problem I had with the original trilogy was that, like, Luke spends, 3 days, whatever, how long he is on Dagobah. And, like, okay, all he has to do is defeat Vader one way or another, and he'll be a Jedi. Meanwhile, in the prequels, it shows that you've got to be like an infant and spend years, your entire life devoted to being a Jedi. But
unless you're Darth Vader.
Unless you're, But I think this did a really good job of showing that Rey and Kylo worked at being who they were, worked at being to dealing with the Force as much as they could. They really expended on their training. That Kylo took his training and went with the direction he took with what Luke had and what Snoke had taught him. And then, you see it starts off with Rey being taught by Leia. So, I mean, I felt that Kylo was I thought they did, as far as being a Jedi training, I thought they did a really good job showing that, like, okay, Rey is being catch up to get to where Kylo was. And I thought that Kylo was a very, very good foil for the internal struggle that Rey was going through.
Okay.
I thought he was really important. I thought Finn and Oscar Isaac, I can't remember. Poe. I thought they were really great.
Super hard to remember right now.
Yeah, I don't think they really had as strong as an arc as Rey and Kylo was, but I thought they did a really good job of dealing with let's put it this way, the threat that was the Emperor. So, like, if you're going to look at the spiritual internal, that's definitely Kylo and Rey. And if you're looking at the exterior, it's like Poe and Pitt.
I like that. Yeah.
So I thought they were really effective secondary characters with regard to the action element of the story, whereas Kylo was a really important character to the internal struggle of the story. I'm giving them a 1. I loved Chewie's reaction to Leia's death. I thought that was incredible. Because Poe tried to like
roar.
Poe tried to go over and comfort him, and Chewie kind of pushed him away. Okay. I thought that really effective. That was really effective.
I thought that was one of the better.
Yeah. So I mean, they did a good job of with the supporting characters. They did a lot. Yeah, but they did a lot with very little
for 9 episodes or whatever.
Yeah, but I thought supporting character wise, everybody was utilized well. But I mean, I think like Poe and Finn and Chewie, they really made the most out of. I mean, like 3PO was cool. I liked his arc, but we always knew that.
I about 3PO and R2.
I said all the droids.
But the thing is, when you wiped out his memory, you knew that R2 was going to contain it to a certain point. And I like that when R2 gave back his memory, it only brought him to like at the beginning of the mission. He's like, I can't wait to get started. And it's like. And like Finn's like, no, we're already past that. Yeah. I thought that was a really nice touch. But like, there's a lot of secondary characters I thought were throwaway that I thought were nice little window.
I want to mention that too.
We're nice little window dressing. But I mean, in terms of secondary characters, I thought that Poe and Finn did a really good job of like wrangling the troops against the physical of the Emperor and the New Order, Final Order, whatever, First Order, and then Chewie was a really good heart connection to the past.
Yeah.
So I'm going to consider those four the strongest elements of the secondary characters.
Also, shout outs to Zori, Rose,
I was gonna say all that.
Lando.
They were there at this film,
yeah.
and anybody
Lando
else
was
we
there.
haven't mentioned. Anyway,
Yeah.
So one's all around for
Yep.
secondary.
There might have been too many secondary characters, but they still were
Yeah.
good enough.
They were good.
I thought the important ones were important and everybody else was just there.
No.
So it is to me with dialogue.
Good luck.
Okay, I have sharpened my fangs for this one. The dialogue was awful. It was not nearly as bad as... nothing could be as bad as the prequels. And it was definitely not as bad as Solo, because Solo and the prequels were some of the worst dialogue ever. But the dialogue... The thing that really drove me nuts about the dialogue was there's a lot of callbacks in the film. And some of them were really good. And some of them were really bad. And the dialogue was just... all they needed to really say for some of these lines was, hey, remember blah, blah, blah. I mean, some of the dialogue was just, even for a Star Wars film, was eye-rolling. It's just like, let's wink at the audience as best we can. And like I said, some of it was like, please don't say this. Please don't say, oh my God, you just said that. God damn, is there no... Did nobody come and fix the dialogue for this film?
It was like get to the choppers in Predator.
Obviously, yeah.
God, it was all so the dialogue, for whatever good there was overshadowed by just some of the most eye-rolling, embarrassing bullshit I've ever heard. So dialogue is getting a pretty big 0 for me.
Yeah, I mean, I largely agree. So I know we said this before, and I wish I could go back and had it in front of me what I gave the previous Star Wars films in terms of dialogue, but I'm definitely giving this one a 0 because, yes, you might be like, I definitely have said this, something similar to like, it's Star Wars dialogue. So, I mean, it has its own feel and cadence to it, but doesn't make it great. And even amongst that, even within that framework, like some of it was like, now I do, maybe this bleeds over in the style in a second, but I did not notice as many like blatant fan winks and nods like, remember this or like this, right? Now, I did notice one or two, like of course, somebody says, I've got a bad feeling about this.
Yeah, it was Lando.
Right? But other than that, I can't think of any of at this moment that were like direct like callbacks, like, you know, fan service 101, here it is. So like
fan service 101.
So like that's fine, but overall, I definitely agree that it was just weak and like lackluster, and you're just like, whatever, like sure, you're gonna say that anyways, but you could have at least punched it up in the script, but you didn't. So you're left with this, and the actors are doing the very best they can with what you have them to say. But what you have them say is often rather lame and falls flat and is wooden.
I would agree there could have been a good amount of punch-ups in this fucking movie. And
yeah.
There just weren't. It just wasn't that great. It got you from point A to point B, and that was all it did.
And almost barely did that sometimes.
I feel like there was probably a team of writers on this movie, and...
Nope, I think it was JJ and someone else. I'm pretty
was
sure.
it?
Yeah.
No, they could have gotten that team.
Well, there
Maybe they should have.
It was JJ and somebody else who wrote the screenplay, and there was 4 people who worked on the story.
Sure.
Anyway, 0.
Okay, good. And Sivo, it is to you with style.
So the style is Star Wars style.
In the same way that dialogue is Star Wars dialogue.
Yeah, I mean, but Star Wars style is always
Right.
fun. Like
Exactly.
it's just good. It's just you're gonna get the good screen crawl in the beginning. It's always like, oh, I'm waiting for the screen crawl, and like no matter I don't know, maybe it's just me, but like no matter how I think a Star Wars movie is gonna be, or no matter what I think at the end of it, I'm always thinking the most memorable thing about a Star Wars movie is the screen crawl. And it's like I just love that shit, and it's
It's a very good device, and they've always used it well.
granted it is imbued upon me from my childhood as like the most epic thing ever, and like I just love that. I thought that the final battle was really pretty epic. I like the like dissolves that they do in Star Wars movies that are always pretty good, and John Williams does the goddamn music, so there's nothing bad
Can't
to say
really
about
go
that.
wrong. Yeah.
So I mean, I like the style. I thought it was good. I think that's. I think that this one. I think if J.J. Abrams can do anything really well, it's to kind of get the idea of what makes something look and sound good. Whether or not he can make a great script or be great at like getting actors to get the exact feel that he wants or needs in a scene, that's another story. But I think that he knows how to make something look really good and look true to what it is supposed to be. And I will give him full credit on that in terms of style for his Star Wars, and I'll leave it to you guys.
Yeah, I mean, you can't really go wrong. Like, if it would be a huge fuck up if they ever made like the visual aesthetics of Star Wars look bad. And like, it's again, the world building is granted it's kind of already been in place, but because of that, there's so much you can do with it, and it's always going to look cool. Like seeing Star Destroyers, seeing TIE Fighters versus X-wings, and all that stuff. Like, yeah, it's maybe good classic stuff, but it always worked. It always has looked visually, it's a spectacle, sure, but it's top notch. And I think for me, one of the highlights is when Rey and Kylo were dueling on the crashed Death Star, and like the huge
water,
waves.
yeah,
like that was fucking sweet. Now, there's one thing I noticed that, again, it's a very, very big nitpick where I don't even know if this is true. This might be like me making it up, but they didn't have like the names of planets where they were going. Like usually there's like a little thing on the bottom, like a bottom left, like telling you where we are. They just sort of mentioned like it's just something I noticed. I was like,
don't remember.
There wasn't any. There definitely wasn't, and I was sort of looking for it. And after a while, I was like, oh, whatever. But I'm saying in general, yeah. If nothing else, what you go to see Star Wars for is some like big screen, appealing visuals and world building that they delivered in this one. And it's like I said, at this point, it'd be really hard to like not execute on that. But that being said, because of that very reason, you have to pretty much give this a 1 in IM.
All right, now for the title crawl, the original Star Wars. It is a period of civil war is amazing. Then you get to like Phantom Menace, where they're talking about taxation, which is I like the way they started off with like the dead speak. I thought that was really cool.
Yeah.
And John Williams' score was amazing, and I thought that last shot or this during the second ending of this film where they pulled back under the X-wing and you see Rey and Finn and Poe hugging. That was great. Mm-hmm. And I really, there's a lot I can say that I liked about style, but I pushed a lot of that into what I thought worked plot-wise, narratively.
Snap, are you gonna give style a 0?
Oh, fuck yeah. Because, no, seriously, I gave a lot of thought when I was watching this. And the things that I liked, the music, because Williams' music always tells a story. When I was a kid, listening to the score in the car, I could place the movie Star Wars out in my mind because there's a musical cue for everything. And to me, Williams' music is part of the narrative. The title crawl is part of the narrative. And visually, I thought there were some really great shots in this film. Mm. And I loved that they paid off Skywalker's X-Wing. And there's some stuff there were some callbacks and visual cues that I loved. But I decided at that time when I was watching this film that I'm going to put all that into plot because I thought that helped the narrative. I thought it paid off a lot of stuff.
Move, but
I thought it paid off a lot of stuff from the previous movies, and they even paid off some stuff from the prequels, which was amazing. But again, to me, that has to go in a narrative. I gave this a lot of thought when I was watching the movie. The thing that killed style for me more than anything else, and this is what I was saying, like I think we all say that I felt like there was at least 2 movies in here, or a movie and a half. I would have rather this thing have been 3 hours and 15 minutes.
I've heard that same thing.
Then
it should be like
having
should have been like Endgame is what I've heard. It like again saw a review or two that said
because
something
the
similar.
Editing in the first half of this film is fucking exhausting. I mean, it was just like move.
I like the first half better than the second half.
Are you kidding? Because I felt like the second half they were rushing so hard to get to the second half that I felt that there's a lot of texture and a lot of substance missing. I thought a lot of the effects were really dark. Parts of this reminded me of Solo. Remember how dark a lot of Solo was?
I do, yeah.
Terrible troll.
And I am going to give, and this is where I'm going to throw into things like all the cute little CGI creatures.
They should have just had a bunch of baby Yodas, I think.
Oh God, I'm so glad they didn't have.
Dude, forgot they had Ewoks in this film too for like 2
yeah.
seconds.
Oh my God, Ewoks at the end, yeah,
and Jawas.
But this is where I'm going to go to the more maudlin. This is where I'm going to put like a lot of the visuals that like to me in dialogue that were like, please don't do this. Oh God, I know you're doing a visual reference, a visual callback, but this is getting a little much after a while. But really the thing that put style in a 0 for me, and it may be a softer 0, was half of the film, the pacing was just relentless. I mean, I was getting like, it was like exhausting.
I see. I get it. Like, I can see why one would say that for sure.
So, I mean, I have to give the story credit, and I have to go into all the things that gave the story credit. The music, how they paid off certain things like Luke's X-Wing, and
All right.
but at the end of the day, I lumped, as I said, I lumped all my criticism into style because I thought that the editing for like 1/2 to 2/3 of the movie was relentless.
I get what you mean.
And distracting.
It was like, you're right. You're like, all right, next scene, they're like, boom, boom, boom.
Yeah.
So let me ask you a question. Like, just you, would you then, in an alternate universe, you would have given plot a 2 and shift a point to style
Yeah.
in a different way?
But given that editing is
That's not
part
how
of
you felt about it.
given
I
that
got
editing is part of style, I have to give it a 0.
That's fair.
Because that was half the movie, and that was really distracting for me.
So I guess I'm doing it a different way. Like, I'm taking a point off a plot, but I'll give it the style credit here.
Yeah.
Fair enough. So 110.
Yep.
Okay, and
Shall I bring it on home?
yes, bring it on home.
I don't know, man. Like, here's the thing. Doesn't matter what I say. Either you probably already have seen this film, like, right? If you're a Star Wars fan, you've seen it. And you can go on everywhere, on every site, every forum ever, and see the argument, best, worst ever. When, they did this, I hate it, I love it, I hate it. Like, it's because it's such a cultural juggernaut of an IP, it almost doesn't matter whether I recommend it. But personally, I would say, no, like, probably give it a soft 0. Like, I only would have seen this film, or have at this point, because of our podcast. Otherwise, I would have been like, yeah, I'll catch it later, like, whatever. I'm not that, again, me being me, I'm not that personally invested in this stuff, in this property. So I would say I personally would prefer The Last Jedi instead of this film. Like, I think I enjoyed it better than this. So I'd be like, you know what? If you're like me, and you are like on the fence more or less about Star Wars, then don't worry about it. But if you're a big fan, like, again, it's almost a moot point. So I officially and personally am going to go with a 0. I don't think it's all that great, even in terms of the saga of Star Wars.
Yeah. I'll give you the last word, Chris, but basically what I'll say is, yes, I do recommend it. If you enjoy Star Wars, watch this movie. It's nowhere near the worst Star Wars movie.
Yeah, I agree.
I don't think it's all that near the best Star Wars movie either, but it is an ending to something, and if you have fucking gone through 8 movies,
you might as well go see
you
this.
have to go see this movie.
Sure.
You know, like you just it's a capstone. It does a fine job being the final part of the Skywalker saga or whatever it happens to be. And I think that it's a decent movie. It's a fine watch. It's not like the best damn movie of the year by any means. It's not going to be an Oscar nominee or anything like I think Star Wars the original was.
It's not going to crack my top 10, but yeah.
But it's worth watching, so I'll give it 1.
Everybody knows my favorite IP is Star Trek because I have to mention Star Trek in this.
Mm-hmm.
I know.
But yeah, I know you know. But the thing
We
is,
got drinks going on.
Yay, drink.
happening.
Everybody drink. All right.
We've been
But
waiting
in
all
all
day to
honesty,
drink.
I think the editing killed this film because I feel like if they'd planned this out, it would have been a richer meal. But at the end of the day, I have to go with what was on screen. And I loved what was on screen. I cried when I saw Luke's X-Wing ride when she rode in there.
Oh, fuck that scene, man.
No, but there were some
right.
very maudlin callbacks where they call back to Dagobah, which I'm like, I know this is fan service, but it got me. I thought it would have been much more interesting if Rey did die and it was Kylo who carried on. That would have been the riskier thing
Lots
to do.
of things would have been much more
I still think it should have been like a Greek tragedy and like Greek gods where they just like bring each other back to life forever.
Yeah.
And that's the end of the movie.
It's a director's cut in which that happens.
But by the same token, I love this movie. I really thoroughly enjoyed it. I feel like it was everything that Return of the Jedi was not. I thought it actually paid off a lot of stuff.
Yeah,
that's
why I'm not recommending it.
I thought it paid off a lot of stuff that was even in the prequels. that really took what I loved about Last Jedi and really brought it to the fore. I thought it was a really great ending. And for all the little modeling things, like I said, I'm throwing a lot of stuff to style because that's where I have to put it. Because at the end of the day, I would actually say, if you want to see this film, it is worth it to go back and watch. I'm not going to ever recommend the prequels to anybody, but I am going to say it is worth to go back. You watch the original trilogy and you start with Force Awakens and you watch The Last Jedi and you watch this film. And to me, to be like, yeah, if you're a Star Wars fan, you're going to watch this film. But if you're not and you're interested in it, I would be like, yeah, you got to see this film. You've got to sit through the first two films. But I personally think this film paid off and corrected the course for any fault. It would have been a richer meal if they had planned the shit out from the beginning and really spent the last three films being
anything has a roadmap.
But you're giving it a 1.
But I'm giving it a 1 because I thought it did everything it should have done. I think it should have been a longer film, but at the end of the day, I loved it. I enjoyed it. I was on the edge of my seat for the whole thing. I really enjoyed it. I would highly recommend this movie. It is not going to be in my top 10 of the year probably, but for what it is, I enjoyed the hell out of it. So I'm giving it a very strong 1 and a very strong recommendation.
All right.
Well, then, what does the Force tell you the numbers are?
Oh,
and
do you need me?
The Force tells me that Scott gave it a 7, and
nope, I don't think so. I think Scott gave it a 6.
Pretty sure
Scott gave it a 6. Did you give it a 7?
I gave it a 7.
You gave it a 7, and I gave it an 8, which I think the aggregate score makes it a 7.
Yep, that's correct.
All right,
that's about right to me. Sure.
Yeah, I think.
All right.
I think there's going to be enough here to piss people off or cheer people on. So
that's always going to be the case with this property. That's what I was making the point of.
But that's why with the MOT system, I think it's really good that we discuss it from a narrative structure.
Sure.
Because, when it became to, I think we all agreed protagonist, even no matter who we counted as protagonist. Antagonist, I felt, I focused more on the internal and you guys focused on the external, which is why I gave it a 1. You guys gave it a 0.
Yep.
And you guys, took off points from plot and gave it to style, which I basically put all my hatred into style. No, I don't want to say hatred, but all my nitpicks I put into style. Sure. So, but it gave us an aggregate score of 7, and I actually honestly think that is fair for this film.
Yeah.
No problems with it on my end.
Sounds good to me.
So, unless anybody has anything to say, I've been Chris Morgan, here with Stephen Hermosi.
Yeah, and I'm waiting for the prequel Star Wars 8.5, The Emperor's New Clothes.
Scott Thurlow.
I'm going to watch Star Whores, which is my favorite in the franchise.
Oh my God.
See you next time. Good night.
Live long and prosper, and may the Force be with you.
Editing and engineering by Christopher Morgan. Music by Christopher Morgan. Check us out on YouTube and iTunes for the shows, and on Facebook and Twitter for updates. Or MOTS?